one of the, we're not going to take questions because that's an idea sharing, but one of the things, Christina, occurs to me is that there's a raging debate, not only in the UK but elsewhere, about how much time young adults spend on this. And if you have a young adult in your wherewithal, you'll know this is 8 to 9 hours a day. That does something to the wiring in the head. And regardless of what we do, in terms of educational infrastructure, this has more power, unfortunately, at the moment than actually the classic educational infrastructure we have. But on that note, let's move to the debate that we need to have. As I said earlier, this is about smart policies for smart tech. Is there such a thing? Can we have such a thing when we're thinking about how we invest, what we invest in? And the choice, I suppose, for Europe is it has, for example, in the proposed MFF, the multi-annual financial framework, doubled its R&D expenditure. We've had a number of things happening in the EU in terms of the AI Act. There's a proposal to create most fantastic gigafactories and make available a more unified approach to investment and scale up for startups. All of this is proposed. It's not in reality right now, but that's the plan, if you like. But is it going far enough? Does it go into the right areas? And the thing about Horizon is, from my perspective anyway, having come from a funding background, is that it's a bit of a spray gun approach. It's 1,000 flowers bloom. And perhaps, is it time for us to be thinking that if we find ourselves where we are in relation to the US and China, do we need a more concerted, more bold and more interventionist approach to the things that we invest in to be able to scale up effectively? And so on that note, I'm going to invite Arthur. Arthur, thank you for being here. Obviously, not needing an introduction like all of our other speakers. You are, seen as a bit of a unicorn. You've done some amazing things, and you're a man about town in terms of this issue. From your perspective, share with us, given the experiences you've had in creating AI Mistral and other areas, what do you think the EU is doing right, if anything? But in the context of the next, let's not call it 10 years, because in the world that we're living in terms of tech, every year is changing everything. The pace is totally different. We know that, especially on the AI. So in the next 5 years, what do you think the EU should do in terms of getting it right? Over to you, Arthur.
Thank you for having me here. So it's a great pleasure for me to come and to tell a few words. I'm not going to lie, I think it's going to be an uphill battle. We have done many mistakes in the last few years when it comes to not regarding AI as something that will be transformative and the major vector of geopolitical power in the years to come. And today we need to act very quickly if we don't want to become an AI colony, and if we don't want to basically have our entire destiny depends on other countries that will be our AI provider. So I think that's maybe to set the stage. I think AI is extremely important for 3 reasons. The first one is, of course, economical. A lot of the value and the growth that we can expect in the coming years will come from deploying digital workers in companies, will come from changing the way organizations are working around more automation. If all of this automation is actually run outside of Europe, and if most of the value actually flows outside of Europe, that raises a very large concern we should have around commercial balance. We already suffer from the commercial imbalance in digital services. It is quite catastrophic. We will continue to suffer from it if we don't act very quickly to change that. So the question is, how can we actually change that? And I'll go back to that in 2 minutes. Just to finish on this is the first aspect around sovereignty, economic sovereignty. There is a second aspect, which is, I think, as important, which is a problem of strategic sovereignty. AI is changing the way we create defense systems. We need our defense systems to be fully independent from foreign providers because we oftentimes do not have the same agenda as our allies and our partners. And so if we want to be able to do our own choices when it comes to resisting our adversaries, we need to invest on AI for defense, and we are not doing it well. So that's a second aspect. And I think there's a third aspect that is a bit forgotten in all of this, which is that AI systems, as the one that we design, are content generating, and they will become the way in which everybody accesses information in the years to come. And as you all know, information shapes democracies. And what is to be feared is that the way everybody in Europe actually accesses information will be controlled by a few US companies, or maybe Chinese companies, that will just decide exactly how people will be thinking. And it turns out that the technology we've done, I don't know if it's a good news or a bad news, is extremely powerful in shaping how people think. And so I believe that this is not something that we have understood sufficiently today. Now the question is, what should we do about that? What should we do to actually reclaim territory on these three pillars, economy, defense, and democracy? And I say the first thing is to stop being naive about the fact that in order to become competitive in a domain where we are late, we need to defend our economies. So we need to protect them. We need to make sure that all of the spending that is done by the defense, for instance, the defense sector, for instance, actually flows to European technology. America and the US has understood that 60 years ago and have promoted a tech ecosystem by making their defense spending flows to the US, flows to US companies. We do not do that well. And this is a shame because public demand can become an anchor customer for all of the European technology providers. That's us, but that's also all of the companies that we work with in the defense sector. So that's the first thing. Public demand is the biggest leverage that Europe and the countries of Europe have. And this is not something that we actionate because we believe in free markets. But if you look at our partners outside of Europe, they believe in free markets, but they do it all the same. So it's, I think we are way too naive about that. The other thing is, of course, we shouldn't be relying only on public demand. The biggest customers, the biggest source of revenue for us today is, of course, private sector. Europe has been lagging behind when it comes to adoption in enterprises. I think Europe has a way to promote adoption of the AI technology in the private sector, and it should make sure that it subsidizes the adoption of AI and direct the subsidies towards a demand for European technology. I think we continuously make the mistake, and we're doing this mistake again with gigafactories, that the one thing to subsidize is the demand, the one thing to subsidize is actually the offer. We need to subsidize the offer in the private sector so that the young companies like ours can actually grow and transform the revenue that subsidize transform into. So if you subsidize the private sector provides revenue for us, and we can leverage that, we can fundraise, we can actually grow, and it's much more leverage to get revenue than to get subsidies. So I think we've been saying it for a while, but we need really to change the way we think about these things, and very quickly. And then finally, when we think about on the action that Europe can take, when we think about regulation, we need to think of regulation as the first question we should ask ourselves is it actually putting European companies at a disadvantage? And in many cases, it's the case. If you look at the data laws, for instance, it's much harder to train a model in Europe than it is to train a model in the US. And for us, it's a very big problem. So we need to realize that all of the laws that we create are oftentimes anti-protectionist in that they favor foreign providers. So at the very least, what we're asking is that the rules that are being set actually are neutral for us. Because otherwise, the very natural flow that we will follow is to get outside of Europe and to actually relocate the company. So that's something to keep in mind. And then, of course, we could go a little further from that and think about regulations as a way to protect our economies. And with that, we've seen the latest discussions, in particular with the US, that they're calling for our weakness, and we should not be weak in enforcing the laws that we've decided to enforce. So this is something I would want to say. I think we can win the AI race if you decide to do that. I think we need to realize that this is effectively a race, and this is a domination race. The US and China sees it as a domination race, and we don't want to be dominated, so we need to actually decide to win that. And it will take some capital, it will take some dedication, it will take some concentration of capital. I think we've been very wasteful by spending 30 million there, 50 million there, by subsidizing research program on AI. In Europe, nothing has has provided anything interesting. And the only way to do AI, when you look at the scale of investment that is needed, is to invest big and to take concentrated bets. I will say one thing about talent. We always think of Europe as as a good place because it's full of talent. This is true. This is true. We benefit from hiring from schools, from all of the mathematicians, the computer scientists that we can train all over Europe, and I think all countries have great universities. On the other hand, if you look at the number of people that can actually shape artificial intelligence today, we're talking about 2,000 people. I think if we count the number of people that are actually working for European companies, this is less than 100. All of the others actually work for US companies or Chinese companies. So we can be very happy about our top of funnel, let's call it that way, the number of people that we train that are 23, 24 years old coming out of schools. Most of them actually go to the US. We managed to retain some of them. But we need to realize that only 5% of the talent on artificial intelligence, the senior talent that are actually able to shape the agenda on research, actually are working for Europe. And this is something we need to change. We have a lot of levers for that. We can facilitate visa. We can simplify bureaucracy when it comes to hiring people. We can reduce the cost of labor because those people are extremely costly to hire. So that's we can do things, but we need to realize that, again, this is a competition and this is a race for domination. That's what I think I can say. Again, regulation, let's see it as a defense weapon, as a shield, and let's not use it as a weapon against ourselves. We don't want to score goals against ourselves. We keep doing it. Let's see demand, public demand, private demand, the coalition of European technology with European champions in the industry as the way to actually reclaim some territory on the AI race. And the time is now, and if we don't do anything in 1 year, I think I don't want to come back here in 1 year and actually realize that we haven't done anything because we don't have this time.
Arthur, thank you so much. That was bold, chunky, thoughtful. It's almost like in my head when I was listening to you, it's like a manifesto of change and development on AI that goes from the supply, demand, and then thinking about education, talent, and what you can do in terms of really quite forensically focusing on how to move shift the dial on this. You've answered my first question, which was about timing. So you said we've got 12 months, because my view is that all the commentators you speak to, even like the data analysts, say that we're so far behind that we'll never catch up. So you're saying we have the potential to catch up, and that's good. But I've got another two. You say AI in defense. Can you break that down a little bit for me in terms of, is that a European agenda, a NATO agenda? What are you, or specifically, what is it you're talking about in terms of defense AI? And then lastly, when you say subsidizing the private sector, can you be more specific? Are you talking about small to medium enterprises, or are you talking about large conglomerates?
So, well, first of all, I should say that I'm still an optimist. In that,
are you backtracking on the 12 months?
Yes. No, I'm very optimistic because I think we've proven, and we're not the only ones who have proven it at Mistral, but there's a few companies in Europe that have proven that even with less people, even with less capital, we could actually compete, and we could actually show the way even to the US. We've been a leader on open sourcing, on open source models. We are actually the only company in the West to be continuing to lead that battle. And so in that respect, I think we have already largely contributed to the field, including in the US. That's the reason why we have many US partners. Microsoft is here, and also many US customers. So I'm optimistic. I'm just thinking, the question is the EU helping us? And the answer is definitely no at the moment. And we need to answer that. Now, on defense specifically, generative AI is a way to reform human-machine interfaces and to access information in a much more fluid way than what we used to do before. What that means is that taking decisions on the battlefield, but also equipping defense systems and weapon systems with more autonomy and more intelligence is already available, and we see that this is actually a key to progress on the battlefield in Ukraine. What that means is that whenever we think about hardware for defense, we need to think about the software that controls it. And when we think about the software that controls it, we need to make sure that we have nobody can turn off that software, because otherwise that raises a lot of security issue. And if you have some hardware and some defense systems that somebody can turn off for you, well, you don't really have a defense system. So I think that's the reason why we partner with companies like Helsing, which is a German company. We're a French company, but we work a lot in Germany. And we partner on anti-drone systems. This is happening as well on everything related to intelligence. This is a major intelligence tool that every of our adversaries use extensively, that they use offensively as well, because they use it for the information. And so we also need to come up with the right cybersecurity and monitoring tools to make sure that for the massive de-information campaigns that will happen in the next 2 or 3 years for the upcoming European elections, we are prepared, and we are not prepared today. So that's what I can say about defense. Now you have a specific question around NATO or Europe. Well, it's great to see, and I think we should have done it way before, to see European countries commit much more of their GDP to NATO. What we don't want to see is that all of this spending actually flow back to US companies. And you know what kind of company I'm talking about.
Yes,
so I think
that's
there is an opportunity for that massive investment on defense that we should be doing to promote dual-use technology, especially on artificial intelligence in Europe.
Great, thank you very much. What about the subsidies question?
Subsidies question. So let me put it that way. If I make 1 million in revenue extra, that makes me around 20 million more valuable. If I'm 20 million more valuable, I can raise 2 million in equity capital to reinvest, because I can allow myself to dilute 10% every year. So what that means is that if you give me 1 million in revenue, I can actually, this is revenue for me, so that's 1 million, then I can multiply it by 2, by 3, because I can raise equity, and then I can reinvest, and then I can create more revenue. If you give me 1 million in subsidy, well, I will use that subsidy, but that's not creating revenue. So if I go to my investors and I tell them, look, I'm just wasting a little less money because I'm spending a little less money because Europe is helping me, well, they will tell me, look, but it's not very interesting because your US counterpart, they've just signed a $200 million deal with the Department of Defense. And so I would rather have 100 million in revenue than 300 million in subsidies. And so that's really something that I think is completely missed, especially on the gigafactories problem. In particular, and the other thing is that subsidies are very easily captured by very clever companies that know how to do financial engineering, that know how to create European subsidies and to turn them into sovereign cloud entities. So we shouldn't be naive about that. I think down the line, the reason why we do these gigafactories is to promote European technology. And so let's make sure that the investments that are being made do not flow back to the US.
Indeed, indeed. And introduce, and this is my words, obviously, an element of conditionality for good, for European sovereignty or European independence in the defense market or security market in particular. But I've plugged you a lot now. I'm going to let you rest for a moment or two, and then but we'll come back. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions in the debate. Could colleagues put up the slide from Debating Europe, please? Because I want to look at it, what you've just said, from what you call a demand side. I'm talking about citizens, especially young people. No, that's not it. There you go. So you may or may not be aware, but we are probably one of the only think tanks in the world, particularly in Europe, where we have a citizen engagement lab. And we have been consulting people for the past, we've had a platform that engaged citizens across Europe over the past 15, 18 years. But in the past 5 or 6 years, we've turned that into more of a deliberative exercise. And in 2024, we launched a report where we'd spoken to 2,024 people across Europe. And that report, Voices for Choices, you can get from our website. But this is something that we've done more recently, which is speak to 18 to 35-year-olds, thousands of them across Europe in key markets, and they're noted there. And we asked them, in terms of EU spending, in policy areas, what's your top priority, for example? And you can see there that tech and digitalization is not a top priority for the next EU budget. So these are young people saying that because they would rather money be spent on health, education, etc. Now that might just be a dissonance issue or a cognition issue, but this is what they say. But on the flip side, if you look at on the right-hand side, it says young Europeans support using tech to create jobs. So there's a real kind of sense that they want tech to create jobs, but whether that's something that the EU should spend money on in terms of AI and digitalization doesn't seem to have resonance per se. But the key issue, if you look at the two graphs, Poland and Denmark, what that demonstrates is that it's about more to do with having the infrastructure in place to support people. And you can see the difference here, that there's a real sense that there's not enough infrastructure in the education system to enable you to have the educational capacity or as a skill set for being digital or be able to use digital and AI sufficiently as you enter the world of work. But I thought it was just useful to reflect this for the people who are not in this room, the people that are out there from different kind of nations and different classes and different backgrounds. But this is what they had to say. But I just wanted to leave that with you. And while I do that, I'm going to turn to Malcolm. Malcolm, one of our European young leaders, and he is joined the Parliament in Ireland, and I think you chair a committee to do with all this stuff, AI and technology, and it's great to get. Great to get a member state perspective. What I'd like you to do, Malcolm, is tell us what's Ireland doing in this space, and and what you're doing, does it have a resonance or a capacity to enable learning across the EU, and then what's your sense of how the EU is dealing with this agenda more broadly?
Well, thank you, Dimendra. And first of all, for those of you reading the programme, I want to apologise.
Indeed, I should have. That's not Jack.
Yeah. So my friend and colleague, the Minister for Public Expenditure and Digitalisation in Ireland, Jack Chambers, can't be here. So those of you who may wish to leave because you're having to listen to me, the plan was to get an AI-enabled hologram, but the budget didn't stretch that far. So you've ended up with me. Malcolm Byrne is my name. As Dimendra mentioned, I am chair of our parliamentary committee on artificial intelligence and other stuff, as Dimendra said. But I might start just when we come to this discussion, and as politicians, we've got to remember that the purpose of tech is a tool, it's not the goal. And for me, the goal in terms of any policy decisions, and particularly when it comes to using technology, is can we deliver better services more effectively and more efficiently to our citizens? Can businesses provide services in our community more effectively and efficiently? And crucially, can we ensure the safety of our citizens? So the principles that we apply in the offline world, I believe we need to apply in the online world. And what often excites me is, and while I would certainly agree with almost everything that Arthur has said, what often excites me is actually some of the SMEs and some of the ways in which they're using AI and other new technologies to be able to improve all of our lives. Yes, I entirely agree with Arthur's point about that Europe is too slow. We're not moving quickly enough, particularly given the pace of change that we're now experiencing. As a general rule that I've always found, policymakers tend to adopt one of three approaches, particularly with regard to technology. This applies in education, it applies in the civil service, it applies everywhere else. The first approach is ban it. We can't have this in here, it's too disruptive, we don't want it. The second approach is there's some merit in this, but let's see how others get on with it, and then we'll look at taking action. And then the third approach, which I believe is the correct approach, and history shows us to be right, is we embrace it, we put in place the safety measures, and we say, okay, we're going to be early adopters and we're going to lead on it. I used that analogy recently, and there was a senior civil servant who sat beside me, and he said, as a civil servant, I have to tell you there's a fourth approach. We set up a review group. And I worry that sometimes in Europe, the approach tends to be, we'll set up a review group. I think the general debate, and to Arthur's point, I don't believe, and I think this is part of the problem, the debate that's coming from the United States, that regulation and innovation are mutually exclusive. And we need to fight back against that narrative that is developing, and in particular that is being pushed by some of the tech bros, individuals who are not politically accountable and who have a particular vision to the world. As policymakers, we have a responsibility first to our citizens. Their responsibility first is to their shareholders. And I think in terms of what the European Union has been doing, and I see the AI Act as part of, and I hate the phrase, the suite of measures, but going through GDPR, the Digital Services Act, the Digital Markets Act, the Digital Fairness Act, the AI Act, it's about putting in place a safe infrastructure that citizens can trust, because I think our obligation has to be that we make safe AI, because we're not going to be able to make AI safe when it goes out. And I always look at it in the same way that if we were making children's toys, there's a whole series of rules and regulations before those toys end up out on the market, but we want to make sure that we have the best toys that are out there to improve the lives of our children. There is the danger of over-regulation, and we do need to guard against that. And I think Arthur's point, it speaks to a broader challenge for Europe about competitiveness. I mean, for me, the fact in recent reports, the Draghi report, I mean, Arthur mentioned about a year ahead, the Draghi report is now over a year old, and yet latest estimates are only 11% of the recommendations are some way along the line. So if that's how far we've gone around Europe's competitiveness in a year, I'm concerned about where we are on the AI side. In terms of specifically from an Irish perspective and what we do, and as many people know, a lot of tech companies are based in Ireland, both international, but there's a very vibrant indigenous sector as well. One of our key focuses as government is around how we engage citizens as well in this technology and how it will be able to benefit all of our citizens and businesses. So with under the last government, the government appointed an AI ambassador. She was a startup businesswoman. She was to evangelize how AI could make transformations. The government then appointed an independent AI advisory council, drawing from expertise from academia, from business, from organizations operating in the space to advise on what we need to put in place. So with the current government, we have a Minister for Artificial Intelligence. We have a parliamentary committee on artificial intelligence, which I've had the honor to be asked to chair. And our purpose is really to lead some of the debate. It's not like most parliamentary committees to produce a weighty report after 2 or 3 years, which is never read. But the purpose of it is to try and inform and stimulate public debate. So we've had sessions around AI and children and young people, AI and older people, AI and disability, and we're now looking at AI and the public service. But it's as much to inform government policy, but to have the debate around it. I'll make one final, and I agree with Arthur, by the way, around neutral rules. I think that's very important. I'll make one final point, which is around, and what has to be at the centre of this discussion, our citizens. This is a hugely disruptive technology, incredible opportunities. When we see particularly what can happen in healthcare and so on, it's phenomenal. But it's going to lead to huge disruption, and when we have disruption in the jobs market, that has political implications. So it is important, apart from us having the debate, that we have structures and plans in place now to be able to upskill and reskill some of our citizens. Some of the early data that is coming through now is that we're finding, for instance, that the rate of unemployment among software engineers is now at double that of the national average. Not entirely sure it's related to AI, but there's a fair chance that this is part of it. In a lot of professions like law and accountancy, the hiring is already changing. So it is critical, as well as us moving on the competitive agenda, we have to have structures in place to upskill and reskill people, because if anything, that has shown us, over the global financial crisis, anytime that there is major disruption politically or economically, people feel alienated. So we need to have a plan in place, as well as a competitive plan, to look at how we invest in education and training.
Malcolm, thank you very much. Just a couple of points from you, and we'll get into the debate once I've brought in the Commissioner. In terms of your remit in the Parliamentary Committee, are you taking a whole of society, whole of economy approach? So it will be good to know that, otherwise it could be anything. Are you looking at it from health, education, employment, etc.? Say a little bit about that. Secondly, what level of cross-pollination is taking place between you and, let's say, France, Germany, Belgium? Because that's the space in which you can make magic happen.
Recording in progress.
So in terms specifically of our parliamentary committee, we're operating and we're doing it in modules because AI is not something that is distinct to one government department. It's impacting on everything from agriculture to transport. So we started by looking at this is the state of the nation. Then we moved on to looking at it through the lens of children and young people, older people, those with a disability. We're now looking at AI in the state. So how does the state deploy AI in the delivery of public services, in the court service, in justice? We're moving then on into education, and there are huge debates in education, ranging from academic integrity to, how do we upskill and reskill our teachers? If we get a chance, and if there's anyone here from Estonia, I think we should talk about what Estonia is doing in the education space with AI. But this is something that there will be very few sectors of society or the economy that will not be impacted, not just by AI, but AI's convergence with other technologies. So it is important we have that debate. And from, government is very much engaged in it and is aware of what is happening. Okay. I mean, we had just this week, we had a really interesting engagement. I can't believe I'm saying a really interesting engagement about procurement. I don't think, interesting has ever been used to describe procurement, but we were discussing around how the state could use agentic AI for purposes of procurement. So it is impacting right across the way. And we are, as member states, we need to learn, from everybody. When I meet with parliamentarians and policymakers across the EU and beyond the EU, we're grappling with the same issues. Some have different approaches. I think in Europe, there is still, we value and we want to ensure citizens' data is used properly and it's protected. And that does clearly differentiate us from the US. And in terms of global governance, I think we have a challenge. I think we also need to start to speak out, by the way, around where AI is being misused, and I'm particularly thinking in China and Iran and other regimes. But look, this is about this is about learning, and I think. No,
but I understand that. But is there a structured program, or are you or others actually collaborating in the parliamentary committees that you sit in to think about actually we're all in the same boat, we're all in it together? How can we learn? Is there a structured program? Yes or no?
Not really structured. There's a lot of informal engagement. It certainly is part of Ireland's EU presidency. We're planning to look at it engaging some of the parliaments a lot more. The last time when Belgium held the EU presidency, actually there was an event which involved parliaments, and that was only, about 20 months ago. It was in January of 24. And I just even think about how far the technology and the policy debate has gone on since then.
Absolutely. Yes, you can. Okay. Of course you can.
Yeah, I was on the topic of adoption of AI by states. I think states, as very similar to enterprises, face some kind of they are a bit paralyzed by the complexity and the breadth of the thing you can do with artificial intelligence. Because you can do anything, this is a general purpose technology. And so it's very similar. Enterprises have the same problem because the CEOs report to the board tell him or her, what are you doing with AI? And then the thing is, at some point you need to figure out how are you going to instantiate that technology into something. And so what we found is that the best way is to start small, look at what the administration is doing, look at certain services that could be, whose quality could be improved, look at education, which is a very big sector that can be improved very quickly, look at also productivity of public servant, because it's especially the case in France that productivity is at least something that is being debated. And
there'll be a protest if you say that. You'll be cast as a Macronite for saying that. But hey, carry on. Let you finish.
And just finishing on that, and we have been kind of replicating some of these use cases across states because we engage with multiple of them. So I think we try to be at our level the messenger of the thing that actually works.
Could I, to that point, Dimendra, if I could, because I think I might give two use cases, one public, one private, that I find fascinating. So the private case is a company called Greyhound Recycling. It's one of the biggest recycling companies in Ireland. And most of us know when we do our recycling, we put it into our bin, the lorry collects it. Probably most of us don't think after the lorry goes away what happens. So The lorry takes away all of the recycling materials. It dumps it on a conveyor belt at this big recycling centre. And this company is now using AI to sort the waste, to sort the recycling materials. So passes under an AI-enabled machine, and then you have paper goes here, plastic goes here, cardboard, metal, whatever. It's currently at 98.5% accuracy, and it's learning all the time. It's more accurate, but far faster than the human pickers who were employed. Now that company has redeployed the human pickers for educational purposes. So they now go out into communities and they actually say, Jemina, you shouldn't be putting that in your recycling bin, but you can add that. The public example I use, which I think is fascinating, is our National Library, where they have lots of very old transcripts and documents and manuscripts, and they're now using AI for the purposes of translating it. So now, rather than the historian or archaeologist spending ages going through, is that some local dialect or what does it mean? It frees up their time to be able to interpret what the meanings are within society. So I think this is where I'm saying is how the tech can actually transform, what we do. And when we can communicate those use cases effectively, then we will see the benefit of it as a tool.
No, sure. I suppose it goes back to the point I was making in an earlier session, is that it feels like 1,000 flowers bloom, and perhaps we're comfortable with that. But in the context of how fast things are moving, and we know how fast malevolent actors are faster than public actors, there's a need for someone to be in charge. There needs to be someone in charge Europe-wide, but that might just be naive on my part. I want all of you to help me, because obviously it's post-lunch, and we've had a lot of people speaking at you, and I'm kind of a bit tired. I hope not, because I want to invite the Commissioner in at this stage. But I want you to think about what would be your priorities for investment. What message would you want to give the Commission in terms of the multi-annual financial framework? Do you feel like the young people that it should be on health education? Should it be sector by sector? What would you like from the MFF, given that it's double the R&D budget, the Horizon budget, but where would you like it to go? But before I bring you in, I really need to bring our Commissioner in. Commissioner, welcome, thank you for being here with us. I'm going to be kind of fairly forthright and direct with you, because I asked this man about what he thinks the Commission is doing to help, and he says they're not being really not being helpful. So are you being helpful, and how?
Good afternoon to everybody. I was really enjoying this exchange. I was long years in national politics, and it was sometimes very convenient for national politicians to blame for everything Brussels. It's too slow, it's too bureaucratic, it's doing nothing, and the Commission, but at the end, the member states are sitting in the Council, the Commission proposed, and then the co-legislators approve or not, add something. Sometimes amendments that are proposed actually are worsening the acts that we did propose. So I really believe that we all together have to do the things right, and absolutely agree with Arthur, very, very fast. Because I'm really start to worry that this feeling of urgency, which I think was there, after the war that starts at our continent, an unpredictable partner across the Atlantic, starts somehow to be forgotten. And I'm afraid that the wake-up calls that and I'm absolutely agree that we are too naive. We were too naive years and years. We put as independencies not only on technology, it was first energy, then technology, defense agree, and so on and so forth. So maybe we're not doing enough, but I believe that we try to do the right things, and I really believe that we and me and my colleagues are trying also to deliver as fast as possible, keeping the democratic standards of consultation, of asking all the democratic standards that we are proud of. Since we came in the new mandate starts, which was 1st of December last year, we did propose 6 omnibuses. I believe that there were very significant simplification for the private sector, and I think only one until then was finishing the legislative cycle. So that means that private sector and our citizens that don't feel actually this improvement and this simplification. So I really believe, yes, we should show, all of us, that being democratic and keeping democratic standards doesn't mean being slow and inefficient, because this make it's a huge favor of those anti-democratic, anti-European political players, and make them to look like more attractive, like strong leader, wake up in the morning with one order, just take decisions in one direction or the other. So I really believe that we should keep the democratic standards, but at the same time be and act faster. So what we are doing, I'll start with the fact that yes, AI, it's a matter of sovereignty. Economic, defense, absolutely agree, also democracy. And there are countries in the world that even are talking about AI sovereignty, and I completely agree. So a fourth layer, economic sovereignty, defense sovereignty, democracy, and AI sovereignty. It's very easy. I'm saying this non-stop, this is to Arthur, that we should focus a bit the program, that we cannot finance everything with Horizon or with the budget, that we should think big, I mean really more supporting the projects that none of the member states is able to develop alone, so to take this focus. But I can tell you it's the most difficult things to achieve. Because when we start to negotiate, then everybody wants to see their own sentence and pet project in this program, which is only 10% of the public funds, no matter that is the biggest in the world. I mean, it's huge, but it's still only 10% of public support for R&I, for R&D. So seeing like that, it's small for compared to what we invest very smart in Europe in R&I with public funds. So thanks for these messages. I'll deliver these messages during the negotiation for the next MFF. Because if you see our proposal, we try really to be much more focused compared with existing program. Only 4 windows, huge increase of digital leadership, as we call it, compared with existing one. It's almost more than 68 billion euros for the next 7 years on digital leadership. That's me in AI. Exactly to think big. We did propose moonshots exactly to focus, to think bigger. One is quantum. I'm not going to fusion energy. Of course, in digital AI. So I hope that this, what I hear, and I'm completely aligned with what I hear, will be also said in the national parliaments, in governments, and so on and so forth. What we are doing as well, it's we invest, and the debate about grants versus, for example, support through equity, it's debate that we non-stop have. I hear your opinion, and that's why in the startup and scale-up strategy, I'm so much focused on access to market, exactly what you're saying, clients, procurement, European preferences, which we are going to propose very, very soon. I mean, amendments in the public procurement directives to motivate when we procure to have preferences and to European technologies, which will strengthen our autonomy. We are also working on motivate the private sector to invest more in R&I and in our scale-ups by working with them to co-invest in the big Scale-up Europe Fund. Yesterday I was participating in one event with one of the biggest, I think it's #1 of employee in Europe, company, public event, and they said we have everything, we just need courage, and I'm absolutely aligned with what they said. I believe that we have a courage to propose brave and political difficult decisions in the Commission. And I hope that this courage will be accepted from the member states. To conclude, all the things that Arthur mentioned we can find in the Startup and Scale-up strategy, including the cost of labor, But I will share with you, as everything, it was leaked, the draft, and even the very, I would say, mild proposal that was coming in the Commission to start real assessment of the cost of failure, of cost of labor, and failure, which is part of the problem in Europe, immediately lead to absolutely strong reactions against. But if we want to reform, we have to know the situation, and we have to be honest that the cost of failure in Europe is much, much higher compared with our main competitors, that we should really accept the good practices that some of the member states have, for example, Denmark, in the labor laws, and develop them and harmonize the rules. So we are determined to work and hopefully to change the perception that we are doing nothing. I think that still the grants are needed because some of the really companies who are innovative and who develop their technology and the innovation is in low tier level, they also need the grants. But I absolutely agree with you that we should combine them and actually orient more to support the companies to find the clients and to access the market faster. This fragmentation, the access to the European market of 450 million, it's really slow. And the part of the strategy of the Commission is also improve this. It's a 28 regime, it's the strategy for complete the single market, it's European innovation area about the sandboxes, and so on and so forth. And to conclude, I believe that regulation actually can have a leverage effect, can be supportive for the private sector. The goal of this regulation, which we did propose on European level, was to harmonize, not to end up with 27 different regimes, which actually, unfortunately, is the case with GDPR directive, because it's directive, you have 27 different implementations. That's why we did propose regulation in AI Act, Digital Act, but we are working, and there will be a digital omnibus will come until the end of the year.
Commissioner, thank you very much, and we feel your constraints stated in the most subtle political manner, but thank you very much for saying that, because I think most people know that seems to be the issue. That seems to be the issue, is the silting up of decisions or picking apart when individual subsidiarity or sovereignty kicks in. But I think from the outside in, there's a kind of democracy, time, pace nexus. And, I think what Arthur and others are saying is that what you're describing has a long lead-in time potentially. And I don't think we've got the time for that, but others may disagree or agree. But is there no sense of that urgency? I mean, Enrico's gone, I think. Has he gone? Yeah. Because he was mentioning that, scrap, the directives and make it sort of much more simpler. Why is it that during an existential crisis, we were able to operate in a way that broke through so much in terms of, let's say, state aid rules, joint procurement, and create the fastest vaccine and build hospitals in months? So we have the capacity in Europe if we feel there's an existential crisis. But from your perspective, is there a sense internally that this is a today urgent issue, or is it something that you can kick the can down the road?
I think that, at least in the Commission, there is a sense of urgency, even risking to be blamed that not all the legislation that we propose is completely perfect. We really believe that we should propose it fast because it's really urgent. I am agreed that we didn't lose the race, but we have to do much more and much faster. Completely agree with it. But I don't approve that all the legislation that we propose should be done by the fast procedures and so on and so forth. So I really believe that we should also have established the conditions like that, that every piece of legislation stick to the democratic rules and values, have to reach the beneficiaries, so to say, fast enough. I mean, if you have a problem, if the problem, the decision comes in 2 years, there's different problems you have already in 2 years. And for example, if you, especially in the technology, everything is developing so fast, if your support comes in 1 year, then you may not be, need this support.
Indeed.
Maybe you will be in bankrupt. So everything should happen faster by keeping the standards. And I think we can do it. We have proven that we can do it, as you said.
Indeed.
It's only,
Yeah, I mean, it's time, surely, that if we were able to do that during COVID, and you can't, perhaps some of it was too risky, and perhaps it's fallen apart, but clearly, getting a vaccine out went through all the due diligence processes. The joint procurement exercises would have gone through some there is the capacity to create a fast-track due diligence process for legislation without, I suppose, undoing democracy. You don't have to answer that question. It's okay. It's a toughie. But so, it's all right. Don't worry. Colleagues, thank you. Can I have the mic, please? Do introduce yourself.
Hi. Hi, I'm Anna Michelle Asimakopoulou. I'm on the Board of Trustees of...
Indeed.
Yes, and I was a former member of the European Parliament, and when I was a member of the European Parliament, I was on the Committee for AI. So I actually did produce a big fat report that I think people read, though. And in any case, I think that the commissioner read it. And I'm saying this because I worked for many years as an external evaluator on the framework programs. So I've seen the evolution of these programs. And yes, I'm telling you as a legislator and as an evaluator and as a lawyer that law can't keep up with technology. It never could. Now it's just quantum leaps. But I also have to say, recognize that the Commission has really made an effort to recognize this urgency and is making steps in the right direction. It's never going to be enough for people who are producing this technology, but let's keep that in mind. If I were to add one thing, I would say, because it was mentioned that we need people with skills and people need a lot of training, I would say that don't forget legislators need training too.
Indeed.
I mean, I didn't know much about AI, and I'm not saying I'm even close to being an expert, but legislators need to understand these technologies well so that they can make decisions for the benefit of their citizens.
Indeed.
So thank you very much.
And thank you, before you give up the mic, and thank you for making that contribution. Two things. I completely get you, because in this fora, over many years, politicians have said, we don't have the know-how. And, people say, well, actually, you could bring the know-how in to the process of deliberation before you put legislation in, which is not lobbying. It's about trying to understand how do you create good. So in that regard, do you think the 28th regime idea is the way to go?
I think it's a positive idea. I think it's a positive idea. However, it needs iteration, let's put it that way. And I would like to congratulate you on this occasion and thank you, because I learned a lot about the 28th by listening to this morning's session. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. Yes, absolutely. I'll bring you all in. I'll start with you, then I'll come to you, because you've been waiting, and yourself. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Monica Brescu. I'm a member of the Romanian Parliament and a member of the IT committee in the Romanian Parliament. And formerly, I was a business owner in the IT field. So I was wondering, and listening also to Artur, and looking at the numbers, because when you look at the numbers for 2024, US has 1,050 unicorns, Europe has 202. How much do we value our champions, and how much do we promote them? And I know that at the level of the EU until the 30th of September, I believe, it was a proposal for a simple legal company form. Do you know about that? So basically, for the startups, it was a proposal for from the European startup companies to have a single legal company form in all 27 states in order to facilitate the VC investments. So maybe we can look at that from the practical point of view. What can we do in order to facilitate all the investments for all the startups? Because what's the purpose actually? We need to have more startups in Europe. We need to raise the investments. But in order to have more startups in Europe, until we have a single market, we need to have a single legal form at least. So maybe we need to focus on that, and because we make public policies. But before we all make public policies at the national level, maybe at the EU level, you can look at this point and see how we can implement that. Because it could be easier for startups to accede to funds if they will have a single legal form in order to be built upon.
Thank you for bringing up that cool idea. I think you're absolutely right. And it's almost like making sure you create passporting for a small sector. And it's the thing is that I wonder how you get it through. And it'd be great to have Malcolm's committee and your committee, and perhaps bring in another 3 or 4 committees from Europe to say, actually, why don't we give it a go and create a legal entity and a form? There's an idea from this forum for you to take forward, because it would absolutely sort a lot of the nonsense out if you had that illegal form. And we've done it in other parts. It's the way we do standards for goods. You could do the same thing for this legal form. Gentlemen here, sorry to have left you behind so far.
Sami Sam from Next AI. I wanted to start by saying, Arthur, thank you guys. At Mistral, you're doing an amazing job to open doors for European AI. But I think it's very kind. I think AI, we are so underplaying it. This is the biggest single most important game this world has ever faced. We are playing with the future of humanity, and the biggest tax is on our kids. So Arthur talks about today's issues, but when we think about 20 years from now, when we can put in 5 minutes all the knowledge in the world from your brain, do you want that knowledge to come from the US, or do you want to keep the sovereignty of the European into your kid's brain? So all these questions is nothing less than the biggest Apollo mission that Europe has to face. So the former Prime Minister of Italy was speaking before is right. It's all about oneness, all European countries coming together and looking at what do we need to build AI systems. So when you look at the US and Trump brings all these gigantic corporations around the table to make those backdoor deals, we have to do the same things. We have to sit together and look at every single layer, from the gigafactories to the chips to the talents that make the AI, and bring them to the table. It comes to not bring another commission, but build a super team of European countries, European leaders that can build technology to come and say, okay, where are the talents from? List all the universities, all the PhD students, all the students. As soon as they graduate, they directly go into the corporations that will build those systems. It goes into just coming together and deciding, hey, how much money do we want to spend on these talents and on these models? Because today, we are risking not only to be dependent on them, but when they will have the choice to own so many different levels, from biohacking to wars, and keep control of that, they will come to us and say, no, we can't have access to it. So we don't want to create that dependency, because as soon as we let AI penetrate every single layer of society, it's gone. We'll never be able to catch up and rewrite history. So this is almost more important than any war that has ever happened in history, and this one, if it's lost, we cannot come back.
Sami, thank you very much. But you've just talked about backdoor deals when the commissioner was saying she wants to keep the democratic process going.
I totally understand, but this is not the time to just do more politics or talk more about, oh, we should follow the law. Some situations require exceptional actions, and I understand that the law moves at a certain pace, but if we wait, you know, it took 7 years for internet to penetrate, to reach 800 million people. It took 2 years for AI. The exponential growth is actually not exponential. It's a totally different kind of curves. So law can wait 1 year, 2 years, but our kids are not going to wait that long.
Indeed.
To live
And they're
a better
already
world.
accessing it in their mobile phones. That's the most sad thing. It's going unregulated, whether it's TikTok, whatever it is, it's there. Instagram, it's completely tailored to what they're watching, clicking, swiping. It's absolutely the case. So, I mean, but we might want to think about this. Because if I turn it the other way, it's not about backdoor deals. It's saying, why can't we just program manage the hell out of this problem and do it quickly? And give someone delegated responsibility from the Commission just to take it forward.
Thank you very much for putting it lightly.
No, not at all. Yes, the mic's coming to you. Please introduce yourself.
Hi. Is it working? Yeah. Hi, my name is Pierre Belforti. I'm a venture capitalist, so I'm speaking my own mind. We have devised quite revolutionary technology some years ago because we thought that Europeans were becoming dependent on American and Chinese technology. I'm just framing it because you'll understand my point afterwards. So we have devised a technology whereby the person can be identified through the electrical brain signal, nothing to do with face recognition, nothing to do with fingerprint. The problem is that face recognition is fairly easy to hack. If you go on Google or YouTube, you can find lots of videos, same thing with fingerprint. And I don't think the Commissioner probably knows, or maybe doesn't know, I don't know, that your face rec sold on the black market, on the dark web, costs about $25. So you lose your identity forever. So we worked out this technology, and the reason why I'm framing it is because we want to give power back to the individual. And only the individual can control its electrical brain signal. Now, I've heard a lot of very interesting things, and it's great to build the different layers of AI applications in health and industry and whatever. Actually, what we're doing is that, particularly in Europe, we're building a building floor by floor, but the problem is that the foundations are rotten, and we're building on someone else's land. And the reason for that is that all the data
Indeed.
that Europeans are input, all of us, every single day, whether you're using all type of social media, whatever you do online, it's being captured by the Americans and by the Chinese because we don't have a European cloud. And when we started the European cloud with Gaia, great idea some years ago, then we invited the Chinese and so on. So we do have a serious problem there. And the other problem that we have is that AI is fed with data, and we don't have enough data. And those data are flowing to the Chinese and to the Americans. So please remember what happened in Ukraine when suddenly Elon Musk decided to switch off Starlink. Imagine if tomorrow that happens with Alibaba, or it happens with Amazon, or it happens with anything else. We're dead in Europe. We're really losing our sovereignty. We're almost at the verge. Arthur has a major point there. In his field is 12 months or maybe 24 months. But the reality is that we are becoming a colony of two major other sort of groups in the world, or blocks, as you want to call it. I don't think we really realize this in Europe. It's really tough, what we're facing.
And is it too late on the cloud side? Because, I mean, how could you possibly, in terms of repatriating information?
Yeah,
and
well,
creating a European cloud, it just seems...
We completely missed the social media side, 20 years.
Yeah.
Commissioner Breton, Thierry Breton,
Yeah.
I mean, he had a point. He said the next wave will be data coming from factories, from infrastructure, from whatever. But we're not there yet. Because we don't have our own cloud. We have a few European cloud companies, but they're still pretty small. And they have a rough time in competing with the Americans and the Chinese. Also because, e-commerce and whatever have you. Now, just another quick thought. Imagine the Tesla cars and all the Chinese cars being sold in Europe. Those are basically computers on wheels with sensors and capturing all the data. Now imagine if overnight Chinese cars or Tesla were to cut off the softwares, just like the F-35 airplanes. This is really extremely serious. I don't think that we really understand the type of colonization that is really taking place.
And on your technology, because you've spoken about it on a number of occasions, have you kept it in Europe or have you sold it to America?
No.
You're not going to answer that question?
We kept it in Europe. No, we kept it. We kept it in Europe, and we actually went very fast because actually the US Patent Office, they issued a patent in 11 days, really revolutionary. We have about 50 patents now. So we're planning across all the different verticals. I won't go into details, but anyway.
Sure.
But it's really giving back the sovereignty to the person because it needs your electrical brain signal, your hand, and your device. And so basically you reverse the relationship between the GAFAM and the platforms and the individual.
Indeed.
And it's pure European.
I'm glad, because a couple of years ago, I think 3 or 4 years ago, you were really concerned that actually the Americans would absolutely lap it up.
Today, sure. But now, you know, we're fine
Good,
with that.
good to know.
But I
We're
mean,
safe hands
it's a
then.
major problem. But actually, we're working on, you know, our scientists and the team is really working on making sure that on the cloud side, we're totally independent from the cloud. So it's really a technology that works basically what we call the MIST, which is on your smartphone or any other sort of device, because it can be used on many other things. It can be used in banking payments, can be used on electronic cigarettes. You know, we can determine a lot of things. So, but totally independent from the cloud.
Good to know, but it sounds dangerous to a certain extent, but also with Agentech and the developments of Agentech, and I'll come back to that in a minute because my colleague here from Tata, I'll bring you in a moment. You don't have to say anything, but I'm going to remember that what we had a conversation about has the potential to, it's almost like a cyber attack. You can just get into your system, therefore.
No, because actually, no, well, we're not going into details too much, but no, I can explain it briefly. When your hand grabs the smartphone, your brain emits 1 million electrical signals, nothing to do with a thought, electrical signals that flow through your arms, through your nerves, which is your cabling, to the tip of your fingers. And then you have a sensor in any device, which is called the gyroscope, that can capture. So it's a unique encryption key that your brain controls. So you have total sovereignty, and you do not depend on external cloud providers or external identification, whether it's GAFAM or anything else. And including what is the EU identity wallet, you know, because actually, if all the hackers of the world are able to, one day, one of the hackers is able to enter into the digital wallet, then we have a serious problem.
Sounds potentially progressive, hugely progressive, but scary biscuits. And, you know, just the thought of it is pretty scary. But let's see.
Scary on what level?
It feels like any that technology which is highly human interactive and so intuitive.
You control it yourself.
No, indeed. But yeah. So
you decide what information you want to give to the GAFAM. You decide.
Yeah.
If you want to be totally anonymous, you switch on incognito mode, and the only thing the device says is the device is in the hands of the legitimate owner, but doesn't say whether it's Pierre or Narendra or anyone else. And then you can switch into cognito if you need to cross a border or board a plane for whatever reason.
There you go.
So you control your identity.
No, I think it's brilliant. But like any new technology, it always needs safe handling and a sanitary.
Sure. My point, I just want to make sure that the message gets clear that we are building a building on rotten foundations on someone else's land. That is extremely problematic.
Indeed. I'm going to take yourself, because you've been very patient, and because I need to close, as I've been told, and over there. And I'll take you, and then another contribution over here. Yeah. So first, yourself. Introduce yourself, and you will have to be very brief.
I'll be very brief. I'm Velislava Petrova from the Center for Future Generations. We are a Brussels-based NGO who works on educating legislators how to govern emerging tech across a number of topics. AI was one of them, biotechnology, also neurotech is what you'd mentioned, and it's an interesting field between consumer tech and medical tech. I don't want to repeat many of the points said before, but I think we need to realize that, yes, we are creating traffic laws on somebody else's highways. And if we have apply AI strategy and want to boost market adoption, we need to understand that we are applying somebody else's AI. That's why here really the cornerstone is how do we manage to invest in trustworthy AI that's built in European standards without agreeing with the Commissioner. We can't compromise on our standards and democratic principles. But can we do that in a way and fast enough that we have the models to apply that are our own, that we have the sovereignty through them? And I would actually have to say that working across technology allows us to see that the same issues appear in different technologies. We are now in the drafting of the European Biotech Act, and the question that the biotech industry is asking are very similar. We want to have market incentives. We want to identify who are the European champions and really invest in the scale-up. I commend here the Commissioner's focus on the scale-up phases. But I have to say that in the end, we really need to sit down together and think of what's the value chain of all of these technologies in Europe, and can we have another Airbus-like example for biotech, for AI, for neurotech, for others? And if we're not able to stop competing between each other for our own pet projects, then I think we will be in the same conversation.
Someone needs to take the lead to create the biggest sandbox in Europe, to get all of the knock heads together and problem solve. It's like going back to the point that was made by Sami, but actually in a different way. We need a kind of that mindset that works through both the regulatory enablement, but also strip down what the supply chain issues might be and who you target. Very briefly yourself, and then I'm going to move over there.
Yeah, thank you very much. Casper Ernest from the European healthcare distribution sector. So coming a bit from the business side and especially addressing the demand side, yesterday I was in a forum. So my sector, we have a turnover of roughly 150 billion euros, but that is nothing compared to the health insurance companies that had their yearly conference yesterday, which is 10% of GDP. And we had there all the leaders of health insurance around Europe. And when we were discussing AI, you know, they were saying, yes, but you know, we need to make sure that these systems are perfect when we apply them, and that people have absolute certainty that, and so on and so forth. And I was getting a little bit frustrated as an individual. Why? Because, you know, this tech skepticism, especially new tech skepticism, led me to think of the fact that our risk aversity is followed by an overconfidence in humanity. And I wanted to ask a question. There was no more time like now. And luckily, one of the CEOs said, we implemented AI, very basic AI,